when trust became a technology. Before machines calculated risk and algorithms priced uncertainty, trust itself was engineered, not as a feeling, but as a system, built carefully, tested under stress, and refined until it worked even when belief failed. To understand why trust became a technology, we must return to a Europe where distance was dangerous. Trade stretched across regions that shared no ruler, no language, and often no peace. Merchants faced a problem more complex than theft or fraud. They faced uncertainty. Who would pay? Who would disappear? Who could be relied upon when courts were slow or absent? The first reveal begins with an innovation that looked simple on the surface. Letters of credit, seals, witness signatures, reputation recorded and shared. These were not social customs. They were tools designed to replace personal familiarity with structured assurance. A merchant no longer needed to know a counterpart personally. They needed to know the system behind them. The second beat follows how these tools spread. Networks formed that track behavior across cities and generations. Defaults were recorded. Reliability was rewarded. Access depended not on wealth alone, but on history. Trust was no longer binary. It was graded, portable, and enforceable through exclusion rather than punishment. What made this revolutionary was not morality, but efficiency. Trust reduced friction. It accelerated exchange. It allowed strangers to cooperate at scale without waiting for authority to intervene. In doing so, it quietly outperformed law, which remained slow, local, and inconsistent. Over time, this engineered trust became infrastructure. Markets assumed it. Contracts depended on it. Credit flowed because systems remembered who honored commitments and who did not. Trust stopped being personal. It became operational. And once that happened, Europe crossed a threshold it could never fully reverse. Cooperation no longer required belief in people, only confidence in systems. That shift would change finance forever. As trust became operational, its design grew more sophisticated. What began as simple records evolved into layered systems that could survive failure. Redundancy replaced reliance. Multiple confirmations replaced single promises. Trust was no longer assumed. It was verified repeatedly from different angles by different participants. The reveal deepened as these systems spread beyond merchants. Banks adopted them. Guilds enforced them. Cities competed to host institutions known for reliable record-keeping. Reputation became currency, convertible into credit, access, and protection. Those excluded from the system found trade nearly impossible, not through punishment, but through absence. The conflict emerged when rulers took notice. Authority had always depended on commanding trust through symbols, law, and force. Now trust flowed around them, embedded in mechanisms they did not fully control. Attempts to regulate these systems often failed. The tools moved faster than decrees. Enforcement lagged behind adaptation. Some rulers tried to co-opt trust technology. They standardized documents, issued official seals, promised enforcement. In places where this aligned with existing systems, trust expanded. Where it conflicted, markets ignored it. The lesson was subtle but decisive. Trust could be amplified by authority, but not manufactured by it. The buildup intensified during crises. Wars disrupted courts. Borders closed. Yet trade continued through trust networks that had planned for disruption. Defaults were absorbed. Risk was redistributed. Systems bent but did not collapse. Law waited for peace. Trust kept moving. By now, the transformation was complete. Europe no longer depended on shared belief or shared rulers to cooperate. It depended on architecture, rules, records, and incentives that made honesty the most efficient choice. Trust had stopped being fragile. It had become scalable. And once something scales, it reshapes everything built on top of it. The true power of engineered trust revealed itself when failure stopped being catastrophic. In earlier systems, one broken promise could collapse an entire chain of exchange. Now, failure was anticipated. It was measured, isolated, and absorbed. Risk no longer meant ruin. It meant adjustment. The conflict sharpened as trust systems grew influential enough to shape behavior itself. Merchants altered conduct not out of virtue, but calculation. Honoring contracts improved access. Defaulting narrowed options. Reputation followed actors across regions, quietly rewarding consistency and penalizing opportunism. The system did not judge intentions. It tracked outcomes. Rulers grew uneasy. Power had always relied on discretion, the ability to forgive allies and punish enemies selectively. Trust technology stripped that flexibility away. Records did not forget. Networks did not care about status. A noble who defaulted faced the same exclusion as a common trader. Equality emerged not from principle, but from process. The buildup intensified during periods of political fracture. As states weakened, trust systems became the primary source of order. Credit continued flowing where courts failed. Disputes were resolved by reference to records rather than authority. In some regions, trust networks effectively replaced governance for economic life, rendering official power secondary. This shift unsettled traditional hierarchies. Influence migrated toward those who maintained systems rather than those who commanded armies. Ledger keepers, not generals, determined access to capital. Administrators of trust became architects of stability. Power reassembled itself around reliability instead of force. But this efficiency carried a cost. Once trust became technological, exclusion became absolute. There was little room for redemption, explanation, or mercy. A damaged reputation could persist longer than any sentence. The system was fair in process, but indifferent to context. Europe now faced a new reality. Trust no longer required belief, loyalty, or shared values. It required compliance with a structure. Cooperation had become automatic, but also impersonal. What had been gained in scale was lost in flexibility. By this stage, it was clear that trust had become something entirely new, not a social bond, but an operating system. The reckoning arrived when Europe began to recognize what it had built. Trust systems no longer merely supported trade. They shaped it. Access to credit, markets, and opportunity flowed through mechanisms few could see and fewer could challenge. Stability had been achieved, but not without consequence. The climax revealed itself during a widespread disruption that tested these systems at scale. Networks recalculated risk instantly. Credit lines adjusted automatically. Defaults were isolated with precision. The economy did not collapse. It rerouted. From a technical perspective, the outcome was a success. From a human one, it was unsettling. Decisions once debated in courts or councils now unfolded silently inside processes no one voted for. As the dust settled, a new awareness spread among policymakers and citizens alike. Trust had become infrastructure, and like all infrastructure, it concentrated power in its design. Those who set the rules of verification, exclusion, and memory wielded influence without visibility, not through force, not through law, through architecture. The resolution unfolded gradually as oversight caught up with innovation. Transparency requirements were introduced. Appeals processes emerged. Systems once optimized only for efficiency began to account for context, error, and recovery. Trust technology was not dismantled. It was humanized. Slowly, imperfectly, but deliberately. What endured was the lesson. When trust becomes operational, society gains scale, speed, and resilience. But it also risks forgetting that systems are choices, not nature. They reflect values embedded quietly, long before outcomes appear. Europe did not abandon engineered trust. It learned to question it, to ask who designs it, who maintains it, and who bears the cost when it fails. The shift did not weaken cooperation. It made it conscious. Trust, once a feeling, became a tool, a powerful one. And like all powerful tools, it demanded responsibility equal to its reach. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future. When